Hi, this is Asara Sandhu from Qbuild Software. I am a sales engineer here at Qbuild, and I'm going to be showing you and talking about our NestLink integration today, which is a bidirectional integration between M1 and your NestLink software. So the NestLink product itself is a background running application. It doesn't have a very extensive user interface because it's meant to sit in the background and share information relevant to the nesting process bidirectionally between M1 and our NestLink software. So we can see at the top of the screen here that NestLink is grabbing M1 information from the job and receipt entries in M1 to push newly received sheets, to push job information, to push part information, material information, and DXF files directly into our nesting software. The idea behind this integration point is to communicate to the nesting software a new inventory that I'm receiving in my M1 ERP and communicating that to our nesting software that, hey, we have a new plate that we can use for nesting and for cutting. B, to also communicate to our nesting software all of the jobs and production requirements that have been scheduled and released out of our M1 system. And lastly, C, letting the nesting software know these are the parts that we need to cut, these are when they're due, these are how many of them we need to cut, and these are the shapes that we need to cut out of our sheet material. So the benefit of using NestLink for this is to cut down drastically on the amount of manual data entry and communication that needs to happen between M1 and our nesting software outside of a typical integration. So if we can create through the integration all of our parts, all of our quantities, all of our due dates, all of the relevant information that our nesting software users need to know so that they can intelligently create their nest, then we can minimize the amount of time it takes to get that information out of our M1 ERP and into our nesting software to help automate that process a lot more, speed up our production, and generally make the process a lot more efficient. On the flip side of NestLink, that's where the bidirectionality comes into play, because once the nest and the parts have been cut, NestLink is then going to return information back into M1 and into our jobs. So for each job and each part that has been cut from that particular sheet, NestLink is going to, number one, update the actual cutting time for each part, for how long it took to cut those parts. It will, number two, complete the operation, the cutting operation related to that nesting process. And then lastly, also update the actual material usage on all of those different jobs based off of the variable scrap and the area or weight or percentage of sheet that I've used for this particular nest. So the benefit of that is that I have accurate insights into my true job costs, and I don't have to estimate the usage or rely on a fixed standard factor, for example. I can dynamically cost my jobs accurately and make smarter decisions based off of that to drive profitability. So that's a bit of an overview into NestLink. Let's hop into a live demonstration here so you can take a look at what that looks like in real time. So I want to first start off by showing the NestLink interface. As I mentioned, the NestLink interface doesn't have a very extensive user interface because it's meant to sit in the background and scan both systems for any transactions to complete. Once it does process any transactions, we'll see the transaction history here. And as the user, what I would be doing with NestLink is just turning on NestLink. And once I turn it on, NestLink will start scanning both M1 and our nesting software for these transactions to process. Once I turn it on, I don't have to monitor NestLink. I can just turn it on and leave it running indefinitely in the background to do those transactions. So the demo today will consist of me spending some time in M1, showing the information that NestLink is going to pick up on, and then we'll go into a nesting software to see the information NestLink is creating and how it's going to bring that back into M1 as well. So let's look at what we have in our M1 environment. So I have this 9004 job ID set up. And with this job, we're trying to create this complete battery enclosure, this BT1000 part. The customers ordered 10 of these parts and they're due today, so we need to cut these ASAP. And you can see that the job has been released to the shop floor, so it's ready for production. And this complete battery enclosure is created out of two parts, or made out of two parts, the BG6045-A and the -B part, which are the section A and section B of the battery enclosure. So we have these two parts, and each of these parts need to be laser cut from sheet metal. So I have identical operations for both of these parts. I have a laser cutting, deburring, and painting operation for each. And I've also assigned the same cold roll steel of 0.074 inch thickness to be used as the sheet metal for each part. So that's the job I have set up. And you may be wondering, how does NestLink know to look for this specific job or filter for these jobs that actually have nesting related operations with them? NestLink will filter through the jobs based on a set criteria. So the first thing it's looking for is if the job is released and ready for production. Next, it's going to be filtering for jobs that only have a cutting operation or nesting related operation associated with it. So in our example, we have this laser cutting operation here, which is related to nesting. So that passes that criteria. And I, as a user, can specify what those operations NestLink should be looking for are in the NestLink settings. And lastly, NestLink is also going to be looking for a job material that is related to that cutting operation or nesting related operation, which we have for both of these materials here. I also have a newly received sheet that I've just received. So my front office has created this receipt in M1, and it's actually for that cold roll steel of 0.074 inch thickness, which I need to use for this job. And we can see some of the receipt information, like where it's going in terms of bin and warehouse. And we can see we received a quantity of 5 of these sheets. So that's what I have in M1. And when we run NestLink, we're going to see NestLink create this work order in my nesting software, the nesting software job, based on what I have in M1 here. It's also going to import this newly received sheet into my nesting software as well. So for this demonstration, I will be using SigmaNEST as the nesting software, but regardless of whichever nesting software you're using, what I'm showing here today will apply across all nesting softwares. So firstly, we can take a look at my sheet library here in my nesting software. And you can see I actually don't have any of that 0.074 inch cold roll steel. I have other thicknesses, but not the 0.074, which I need for this particular job. So when we run NestLink, or when NestLink processes that transaction, it will automatically import that sheet into my sheet library here without me having to interact with the systems or manually enter any of that data in. So let's go ahead and run NestLink. And for today's demonstration, we'll be using the individual tester just to target these specific jobs, because I don't want NestLink to scan my entire environment today. But again, in reality, you would just leave NestLink running and it would run indefinitely in the background. So the receipt was 8,000. Let's go ahead and process that. And now when I go into my nesting software library and refresh, you can see NestLink has now automatically added in that cold roll steel of 0.074 inch thickness into my library here. And it's also brought over some of the other information from M1, directly from M1. So my thickness, my sheet dimensions, we can see that quantity of 5 that we received on that sheet, what the area is, and any other information I want to bring over from my M1 system. So I didn't have to manually enter any of that. I didn't have to go talk to front office to add this in. NestLink did this all for me. And now looking at our work orders in my nesting software, my job, we can see that I don't have any work orders set up for that 9,004 job I need to cut for the batting enclosure. So again, similar to the sheet list, when NestLink runs or processes that job, we're going to see it automatically create the work orders for each of the parts we need to cut. So let's go ahead and run NestLink on that job as well. And you can see NestLink creating those transactions. And if we go back into my nesting software and we refresh, we can see NestLink has now automatically added in those 2 work orders for me. So if I click into this, I can see the section B part that we were trying to cut, the quantity that we ordered, need to cut, the due date, the thickness of the part, revision, and other information that's coming directly from my M1 system. You can also see that NestLink is automatically bringing in my part geometry as well from my DXF files. And we can see this for the section A part as well, and it's also brought over that part geometry. So no manual data entry, all automated and done for me. So that was NestLink bringing over the job requirements and part requirements into my NestLink software. Now to show the flip side, the bidirectionality of NestLink updating my M1 job with the completed cut, I'm going to simulate a nest and a cut here in my NestLink software. So this portion of me simulating a nest and a cut is not related to NestLink. I'm just simulating that nest. So let's go ahead and find my two work orders here. So the 9004, these are the parts we want to cut. And then let's use the sheet that I just added as well. I'm going to be using the Auto Nest feature for this, and then also the Auto NC feature. And let's go ahead and post this to my machine. And it's important to note of the program name because that's what NestLink will be looking for once the cut has been complete. So we sent this to the machine, and we can take a look at the program here of the completed cut. So there we go, program 600, and we can see the completed cut information here, such as the cutting time, the area of the part, how much area of the sheet was used, etc. And we can see the two sections that we cut there as well. So now that the nest has been completed and the cut has been completed, let's take a look at how NestLink is going to update my M1 job with my actual material usage and cutting time. So firstly, we're going to see when we run NestLink, it's going to update my actual material usage here, or my material usage to the actual amount. So I've assigned 10,000, which is half of the sheet. The whole sheet is 20,000. I've assigned half of the sheet for each section, and we're going to see NestLink update that because, as we can see from the nest, only about 40% or less than half of the sheet was used for both parts. So we're going to see NestLink update that for both of these parts, and then it's also going to automatically allocate this material from my inventory to the specific job. So I can go into my warehouse allocations right now, and you can see that I don't have any allocations yet. But when we run NestLink, NestLink is going to allocate this material as well for me. And next, when we run NestLink, we're going to see NestLink complete this laser cutting operation for me for both parts, the sections. And then we're also going to see it updating the production hours with my actual cutting time as well. So let's go ahead and run NestLink now. See what that looks like in M1. You can see it is updating our material and also our cutting time. So let's go ahead and refresh the job now. And we can see that NestLink has firstly completed the laser cutting operations for both parts, indicated by that blue colored highlight. We can also see that it's updated my production hours to the actual cutting time, so 0.15 for the section A part and 0.25 for my section B part. And it's also updated my material usage to the actual amount. So what was previously 10,000 is now set to was calculated to 2.7 thousand roughly in square inches, and for the section B we have about 3.5 thousand square inches used for that. So quite a little less used, and we can make use of that remaining remnant for other jobs if you'd like to as well. Now let's take a look at my material allocations, and we can see that NestLink will have allocated that material as well. So if I go into my allocations now, we can now see that NestLink has allocated the appropriate quantity and actual material usage to my 9004 job or that cold roll steel sheet that we were using. So that was done all automatically for me without having to interact with either the systems or manually enter any of this data, helping push along that production process, automate that production process, and make the production and nesting process a lot more efficient and accurate. So to summarize the benefits of NestLink, by creating all of these parts inside of the nesting software automatically, and by automatically creating those transactions or updating the actual material usage and cutting time back into M1, we can eliminate a lot of manual data entry and manual reporting that we would otherwise have to do. We can also ensure very accurate information between the two systems and accurate job costing and inventory in my M1 environment due to the fact that NestLink is consuming material based off of actual quantities and not an engineering estimate or an estimated scrap factor. I hope you found this presentation helpful, and if there is anything we can do to help, please do not hesitate to reach out. We'll be happy to set up a live demonstration or answer any of your questions. Thank you.